After decades of humanitarian work in one of the world's most closed nations, Reverend Hyeon Soo Lim went missing in January of 2015 in North Korea with no word of his whereabouts. His Toronto church, Light Korean Presbyterian Church, wouldn't have any news until March of that year, when the nation confirmed they had detained him. But it wouldn't be until July when Reverend Lim was seen for the first time, as North Korea aired a video of his confession of crimes against the state. In December, his family and congregation received devastating news, and their spokesman, Lisa Pak, is here to bring the update. Lisa, you know, you and I have been in touch over this whole last year, and I know that our viewers have been praying for Reverend Lim. I've had people contact me for updates. What is the news that you just received in December?
And on Wednesday, December 16th, we had heard that there was going to be a trial. The trial was 90 minutes long, and the sentence was passed shortly thereafter in the same sitting. And the sentence was a life of hard labor. And so that was obviously, it was shocking to hear. I think it was one of the harshest sentences that a foreigner has received for a little while. Disconcerting for the congregation, but at the same time, we do trust that God is in control. And it was good a couple days later where we heard that the Canadian officials finally got consular access and were able to see him face to face. And they had reported back to the family and the church that he actually said that he was at peace. And again, that was through other people. And so we were hoping that eventually we'd be able to hear his voice and see his face again.
And he said he was at peace knowing that people were praying for him too, right? That was a big part of his peace. How did the family receive this? Because literally this is 10 days before Christmas. And to get this kind of news, it was not what we were all praying and hoping for.
It's one of those situations where at first, because the sentence is so harsh, you're taken aback, but then you recognize that this is progress in one direction. And so, you know, great political advisors, people, friends of the family, people who have been interacting with North Korea have said, well, this is kind of like standard procedure for them where the trial is moving forward. The investigation phase has ended. So it is an opportunity for diplomatic discussions to accelerate and to really move along the process. And so in that regard, it's taken aback at first because the sentence is harsh, but it's good news in a different way because now we know that progress can be made.
Yeah, that is good news. And just this week, CNN actually was able to get an exclusive interview with him. So you had said that the family was hoping that they would be able to hear his voice. They were able to do that just this week. Let's take a look at a little bit of that interview.
Thousands of miles from home, a world away from his old life, Canadian pastor Hyeon Soo Lim lives under the constant watch of North Korean guards. No contact with his family or parishioners of his Toronto church. The 60-year-old works 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, alone, digging holes in an orchard. At the labor camp where he's serving a life sentence, Lim is the only prisoner. The guards wait just outside.
How are you feeling?
It's fine.
You okay?
Yeah.
You in good health?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lim speaks and understands English, but the authorities insist he answer our questions in Korean. We assume they're listening from another room in this Pyongyang hotel. I wasn't originally a laborer, so the labor was hard at first, he says, but now I've gotten used to it. Lim says he gets regular medical care, 3 meals a day, humane treatment by a country the United Nations says has one of the worst human rights records in the world, allegations North Korea strongly denies. Kim says he has not been forced to study North Korean ideology. He's even requested a Bible, though he hasn't gotten it yet. He prays every day.
What do you pray about?
I pray for the country and the people, he says. I pray for North and South Korea to be unified, so a situation like mine won't happen again.
And Lisa, I'm sure it's been mixed emotions seeing him like that, but also seeing him. So how did that hit the congregation and the family?
I think, again, when you see pictures like that where your senior pastor or loved one is in prison garb, essentially, and he looks very physically different from even when the trial and the sentence was passed. They cut his hair. And it's hard to say that it's standard procedure. I mean, we've seen Kenneth Bae in this similar garb and haircut and the other South Korean pastors as well. It's not standard when it's your loved one. So in that respect, again, a little taken aback. But I will tell you from personal experience, his voice is him. and he does look at peace, and he certainly loves the Bible, and to have requested and not been refused is a huge thing for him, and for us to know that he is getting decent treatment from North Korea as far as we can tell.
So you said he looks different. Is that just his hair, or is there other changes in him since July?
We expected that he would have lost some weight. Again, we were told that he did sound just before the on-camera part, but just by the reporter himself, that he did sound like he did, and also that he looked very at peace. And you can't really tell how much weight he's lost, but he seems okay. So.
Yeah, I thought he looked fairly healthy, not knowing how he would normally look. He didn't look as bad as I thought, which I know sounds terrible, but you worry about how he's being treated. And he has some medical concerns too, right? He's 60 years old. He has high blood pressure. And so there was some concerns about that.
Yes. We were told that he actually said that he was getting regular medical treatment, and they were taking decent care of him, and that he did receive the medication that we sent. So it seemed, and again, he was getting 3 square meals a day. And so it sounds like they are treating him well. And again, that's good for us. And we hope that, again, that is implication that they're willing to negotiate to see his release. I mean, they're treating him very well.
That is the hope. When you see an interview like this, and of course it's hard to predict what's happening in North Korea. It's a very secretive country. We don't know a lot about it. But there is some hope now that this
Absolutely,
interview...
there is always hope, and that's one of the things that we really appreciate about the global community of believers in prayer and our God who is good. And even this situation, because again the interview was aired, we see that it might be a hint that North Korea is willing to come to the table, and so we're really urging Canadian government officials to take this opportunity to accelerate and to move along the diplomatic discussions. We just want him home.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could see, he actually recorded a private message for his family, which you haven't seen out of respect for the family, and CNN hasn't aired it out of respect for the family. But I know that they quoted here that he said, "I realize so keenly how valuable my family is, how precious it is to me. Family is a precious gift from God. I would like to tell my family I love them so much." You know that he doesn't know if he'll get to see his family again on this earth. He mentioned that you were able to send him a few letters, and he sent out a letter, and he received dried fruit, he said, his favorite. Has the family received the letter that he says he sent?
To my knowledge, they haven't received the letter, and so we're trying to track down where that letter might be, so perhaps they can receive it. We do know, again, he's received the 2 letters that the family has sent, so something must have gotten lost along the way. We are hoping that we'll eventually receive that letter so that we can hand it over to the family.
And even hope those lines of communication may be more open now at this step.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Which would be so encouraging. What can people be praying about for the family, for Reverend Lim, for your congregation?
The congregation, please continue to pray for the leadership. Obviously, there's a lot of different personalities, a lot of different people opinions, but we all just want him home, and we want the church to continue being strong and stable and unified. And for the family, just peace and comfort, resilience in some of the days of waiting. I'm sure that everybody understands that there are easier days and hard days, and we don't want the thoughts to overwhelm, but just really faith and to trust in God. And for the peninsula, there's always a lot of talk on the peninsula in terms of the politics or what may happen, whatnot, just for peace. On the peninsula as well. And
that's what he says he's praying for every day is peace and the reunification of North and South Korea. So you know that he has a lot more time. You were mentioning to me before this interview that he said without all the distractions of social media, it's changed. How has it changed his life?
I think it's added a sense of a slower rhythm, and slower not being bad, just a more balanced approach to life and reflection and contemplation. And we know that there was a huge monastic movement in church history to withdraw from the world and to really just contemplate on the things that we do and take for granted. I think that's, again, just reminded him how precious family is. Because sometimes, I mean, every pastor knows you get very busy and maybe you miss out on the precious gifts that are right in front of you. And so to hear him say that, he's got a lot of time to think and meditate and pray, which is always a good thing.
I mean, you guys are a 3,000 member church. It's huge. You know, one of the things that's been on my heart ever since I've known that he's been in prison is this verse in Acts 16:25 about how it says around midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them, that they were making this amazing witness in prison. And one of the things we know about God is sometimes that he has a plan that is so different and bigger than we think. And so one of my prayers has been that God would use him even in prison to minister to people, although he says right now he's alone in prison. I don't know what it's been for this whole year, though, but we know that God is doing something. And
Yes,
his eyes are on
absolutely.
Reverend Lim.
Absolutely, and so we trust that God is using this for his unique purposes. I mean, his ways are not our ways, his thoughts are not our thoughts, and so we trust that God is ordaining all of history. And this is just one of those moments where we'll see him turn it into something good and an awesome blessing for all those who obey and trust in him. So,
Well, we're going to get people to keep praying. Thank you so much for coming and bringing this update. And
thank you so much,
we
Cheryl,
know
for
the
having
story's
me.
not done.
Absolutely.
Well, if you've been watching this and you're saying, I wish God would use me to do something in the world and I don't feel like I'm doing enough or I have those opportunities, this is a chance for you to make a difference. And we need to remember that prayer is doing something, that prayer is the most powerful thing we can do. More than any action, it is the thing that's going to change this world. I want to challenge you and ask you to pray for Reverend Lim, to pray for North Korea, to pray for this family and this congregation. God is up to something and we still have hope that we're going to see him back in Canada one day soon.